Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Imagine the sheer shock to the global system if one of the absolute oldest civilizations on Earth suddenly became the wealthiest, most dominant player in its region. Today, we're exploring a seriously fascinating economic and cultural what-if scenario. It's a premise that challenges pretty much everything we think we know about the current geopolitical landscape of the Mediterranean, and really, Europe as a whole.
Picture this, a reality where the land of ancient philosophers and those gorgeous sunlit islands suddenly transforms into the undisputed economic engine of the continent. To really wrap our heads around how massive this pivot would be, we kind of have to contrast it against recent history. Think about moving from a nation that spent the 2010s navigating a really severe debt crisis to a hypothetical future where its GDP is actively outpacing traditional titans like Germany or France, literally leaving them in the rearview mirror. For years, the global perception of Greece has been tied to its incredible history, amazing food, summer vacations. But overwhelming, undisputed economic dominance, well, that requires a massive influx of capital, a total reversal of the talent flow, and visionary engineers rushing to Athens to build the future. So we've got to completely reframe our paradigm here. For decades, the focus has really been looking backward, right? At the ancient ruins, the traditional island life, the summer holidays, but this new paradigm requires us to look forward, shifting our view to a nation celebrated for the future it's actually building. We're talking about a landscape fundamentally redefined by tech hubs, aggressive innovation, and massive global corporate giants establishing their European headquarters right there in the heart of the Aegean. It's a total top-to-bottom rebranding from a heritage destination to a relentless, forward-thinking economic powerhouse. Number 1. To actually hit that number 1 spot and become the wealthiest nation in Europe, it would take a lot more than just some flashy cars rolling down the streets of Athens or a temporary bump in foreign investment. It would require deep, agonizingly difficult structural changes across multiple industries, overhauling legacy bureaucratic systems, cutting through literally decades of red tape, and building world-class infrastructure. That takes immense grit. We're talking about surging national revenue, booming commercial real estate, and most importantly, a level of fierce national confidence that completely rewrites how the country sees its own capabilities on the world stage. Let's look at the engines of unprecedented wealth, or the pillars of the boom.
Now, Greece's absolute biggest asset has actually always been its geography. By leveraging its Mediterranean location, it acts as the ultimate physical and digital bridge connecting Europe, Asia, and the Middle East for high-speed trade. But it goes way beyond just moving cargo. It means taking an ideal, sun-drenched, and windy climate and turning it into a massive, highly efficient clean energy grid, making the country a totally dominant solar and wind energy exporter. Add in premium tourism, unparalleled maritime infrastructure, and cutting-edge tech innovation, and you've got these 5 interwoven pillars. This isn't just about discovering some new resource. It's the strategic mastery of turning existing natural assets into inescapable global leverage.
Crucially, these existing sectors don't just grow, they fundamentally evolve into highly efficient, dominant global forces. Tourism? It upgrades from your standard summer vacation to high-value wellness centers and year-round digital nomad hubs that inject continuous capital into the local economy. Shipping goes from a proud heritage industry to a literal economic superweapon driven by automated ports, artificial intelligence, and real-time digital tracking. And energy? That shifts entirely from a crippling import dependency to an absolute export powerhouse. Supplying clean energy to Central Europe would give Greece the kind of strategic, geopolitical leverage that's traditionally been held by massive fossil fuel states.
But honestly, as powerful as those physical industries are, the real accelerator here is jumping into a robust knowledge economy. We're talking about an economic system driven strictly by intellectual capital. Imagine a domestic ecosystem perfectly tuned to attract AI labs, green tech startups, and global venture capital. The strategic mechanic here is really twofold. First, convincing foreign founders to set up shop by offering a globally competitive business environment paired with that unbeatable Mediterranean lifestyle. And second, and this is so critical, giving brilliant young Greek scientists, engineers, and developers an undeniable financial and professional reason to stay and build their empires right at home.
All right, moving on to transforming Greek society and the domestic reality.
You know, the human impact of this would unfold like a massive chain reaction. First, wages and abundant high-skilled jobs rise across the board, finally pulling people out of long-term economic anxiety. Second, this powerful economic magnet reverses decades of severe brain drain as top-tier talent finally starts returning home from London, New York, Berlin. Third, everyday families secure long-term financial stability, which breathes life right back into local communities. And ultimately, the entire national psychology shifts, moving from hesitation and survival mode to bold, unbridled ambition. A young student dreams of staying, a local entrepreneur gets access to international funding, and citizens realize the system is actually working for them.
But look, let's be real for a second. This kind of hyper-wealth brings immediate friction. It just does. The incredible modernization of public services, sparkling new schools, heavily funded advanced healthcare, high-end urban renewal, that clashes directly with severe affordability crises. Surging real estate prices risk pushing locals right out of their own neighborhoods, potentially turning coastal cities into elite-only playgrounds for foreign billionaires. Plus, deepening inequality becomes a massive risk if wealth concentrates too heavily in urban tech hubs while the rural areas just get left behind. And naturally, newly formed cash-rich markets always become prime targets for highly sophisticated organized crime. Wealth is immensely powerful, for sure, but it is never automatically fair.
Growth is only as good as the institutions that manage it. We really have to consider this warning from the source material. It's a fundamental law of economics. If money floods a national system faster than transparency, regulatory frameworks, and anti-corruption safeguards can handle it, the resulting boom just becomes a volatile crisis. To truly be the richest country in Europe and actually maintain that status, Greece would also need to become one of its smartest, most disciplined, and fiercely regulated environments. Unprecedented wealth absolutely demands unprecedented accountability.
Zooming out, let's look at reshaping the European map and the global ripple effect. On the global stage, Greece suddenly emerges as a fierce new diplomatic heavyweight. Rather than just reacting to European Union policies, Athens would dictate the terms on trade routes, migration policies, maritime security. Because, as we know, capital attracts political influence, major investment flows would organically redirect toward Athens. This effectively shifts Europe's entire geopolitical center of gravity south and east. For decades, the EU's direction has been largely driven by the traditional Franco-German engine. Well, in this scenario, those established Western European powers would be forced to adjust to a completely new reality where Greece commands enormous, undeniable economic respect and veto power. Finally, let's explore a modern cultural renaissance, really getting down to the soul of the nation. Ruins and high-rises. Just picture that for a second. Imagine a vibrant, hyper-modern Athens where deep, ancient history and modern excellence are fused seamlessly together. We're picturing a sprawling metropolis where thousand-year-old ruins and glittering high-rises coexist side by side. Streets saturated with classical antiquity intersecting totally naturally, with districts buzzing with cutting-edge software development and green tech. It's a striking visual of a society that honors its past while aggressively engineering its future.
Temples and tech towers. The absolute beauty of this scenario is that the old and the new don't cancel each other out. Actually, scratch that. It's better than that. They amplify one another in a brilliant cultural explosion. With a massive influx of public funding and private patronage, Greek cinema, experimental architecture, high fashion, and digital media would take center stage globally. It proves that extreme economic growth doesn't have to bulldoze a nation's soul. It can actually give that identity the financial runway to flourish on a much, much larger stage.
A civilization reclaiming relevance strictly on its own terms. The symbolism here is deeply inspiring. Think about it. The very birthplace of democracy, logic, and philosophy returning to lead the European continent economically. It wouldn't just be the story of a newly rich country. It would feel like the grand arc of history coming full circle. Greece wouldn't have to abandon its unique Mediterranean identity to achieve immense wealth. It would use the power of that exact identity as the unshakable foundation for its modern success. Which leaves us asking a pretty profound question. Is history ever truly finished? This explainer reminds us that nations can completely reinvent themselves, that economic trajectories are never set in stone, and that a massive structural rebirth is always possible with the right catalysts. If this new Greek miracle were to unfold tomorrow, what specific industry do you think would trigger this historic rise first?